Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
Hi Lorraine, how are you?
Have we started?
I don't know, we're not starting then? Did you not hear that then?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did
Okay.
hear it. This meeting is being recorded.
Very good
Hello,
impression.
Stu. I'm going to leave that in as usual. I think our public needs to see how slick we really are. How you doing, mate?
Polished is the word.
Sorry, what was that again?
Polished is the word.
Oh, polished, of course.
Polished.
You're looking
That's
very
it.
polished, mate. What with a weekend of horse racing, beer, and England winning. You're
I know, I'm sort of sitting there thinking, I've got the kind of sweats that too much beer from the night before is producing.
nice. You're taking
and the throat, of course, as well.
I think there's a throat joke in there somewhere. So what did you want to talk about today, lovely?
Well, I think we've got to really cover off, haven't we, the 30th? It's
big
gone.
3-0.
Everyone's, yeah, it's gone, isn't it? So it's a big sigh of relief for the whole profession. And it's now, are we going to return to to normality? But what is normality now?
Well, I think that's a big existential question for humanity, Stu, at this precise moment, mate, not just for conveyancers. But I think an interesting point that you made before we press record, you are being recorded, is actually I think as practitioners, we've got a fine balance, haven't we, as you've just said, between talking to colleagues watching this about the reality of what conveyancers are facing every day, as against just sounding wholeheartedly negative because it's all still so difficult. I mean, I think it is worth saying, there is much about the stamp duty land tax holiday that's been fantastic for conveyancers, not least the amount that they will presumably have billed. And I'm sure that stamp duty land tax holiday has kept a lot of businesses afloat, and good luck to them if it did. But the reality is we can't ignore the impact on the staff and indeed the clients, it must be said, who also have gone through extraordinary stress. And I suppose the first thing I would want to talk about is clearly the H word, holidays, and the fact that lots of people now, stamp duty land tax first cliff edge has just finished. Lots of staff are going to be wanting their hollybobs, quite understandably, and that's going to impact you, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think we've got to let everybody know that once completion takes place, there's lots of work that we've still got to attend to. So there's the administration side of mortgages being redeemed and collecting the right paperwork. There's submitting our returns to the Inland Revenue for stamp duty. Then, of course, there's the registration process at the land registry. So that period is still a good few months of work that conveyancers will have to undertake for their clients.
Yeah, I think it's something I say a lot actually when I'm teaching, Stu, which I think people forget. And I think, and let's wait for other people to pick this up, shall we, Stu? But I do think the post-completions team, whoever does the work, are really unsung heroes. We mentioned accounts departments fairly recently, and I think similarly post-completion teams, if firms have them, because of course the post-completion work is the riskiest part of the transaction in many ways for conveyancers. And I also, just for the benefit of perhaps the less experienced watching this, just a reminder that the stamp duty land tax deadline of 14 days, that's just straight days, that's not working days. At least with the land reg deadline, we've got working days, and 14 days can just trickle away incredibly quickly. If you've got a couple of days off, you've got a couple of weekends thrown in there, that's a week already. So
it is with the volume,
I think,
isn't it? That's the key, isn't it? It is with the volume that they've got to go through. So where we've all been sort of moaning, as fee earners, and we've had our accounts department under significant pressure, that's now, of course, the baton's been passed, hasn't it? So our post-completion departments have got to look at the same volumes. So again, they're doing sort of double the work in half the time again.
Yeah, exactly. And they do have, they've also got the deadlines. And of course, the old revenue are a bit sneaky, aren't they? Because if you do submit a stamp duty land tax return late, the first thing they do is send a letter to you and your client. So so you're definitely going to be picking up that £100 penalty without any shadow of a doubt. But I know I had one. I think it was when the stamp duty land tax was 30 days, and I think my assistant was off, and it was the Christmas period, and I picked it up the minute I got back in January, and it was too late. And there might be conveyancers looking at this but saying, "Oh, how terrible, Lorraine, you didn't do it on the day of completion." Well, quite often there's what we would all there's the reality, isn't there? There's the reality gap. There's what we'd all like to think we're doing as against what we actually will do. So how do you think the old the old holiday thing's going to pan out, Stu? Because I mean, you said quite rightly that, of course, firms again are sort of staring in a bit of a perfect storm, because firms have allowed some people to carry holiday over. Nobody's been allowed to take holidobs for the first 6 months and everybody of the year, and everybody wants holiday now.
Because they couldn't go away for the first half of the year.
Yeah,
so you've got that, like you say, you've got the perfect storm, haven't you, where people are going to be carrying the maximum amount of holiday they've had for some time, and probably all to be used within the next 6 months. So it's going to be a challenge, to say the least.
Yeah, and of course, three of those months we're still running up to the next stamp duty land tax cliff edge. So everybody's focused
we've kind of forgotten, haven't we? We kind of forgotten about the 30th of September. There was such a build up to the 30th of June that we've all kind of forgotten that potentially we might be doing this again in only a few months.
Well, I did think that. I've sort of, I've said in various intervals, well, actually, all we've ended up with is 2 cliff edges. And it's fair to say that let's hope, in a way, that the June one is the biggest one. It's the greatest height from which we're all going to drop. But what's your view on new work instructions? I mean, there was this perception, wasn't there, that everybody was sort of going to just go back immediately to what they were doing before, and the work volumes of before, whenever we take before to mean, March the 1st, 2020 maybe. And that certainly doesn't seem to be the case, does it?
No, this is where it's really difficult, because we've kind of forgotten what normality is. And before the current climate, we were sort of really dealing with the back end of Brexit, and even that and fully coming out was making a big difference to the market. We were seeing sort of instructions picking up substantially, and that was before COVID kicked in. So where the sort of normality line is going to be, who knows? But during February, we personally hear sort of a bit of a dip, and we put that down to people not being able to complete before the March deadline, when that was. We thought, again, I suppose this time around, come mid-May, when people realised they wouldn't be able to get in by the end of June, there'd be a slight dip on instructions, and they would defer those to potentially later in the year. But we've not seen that this time at all. The demand to move and buy a property is so high at the moment that I think it's going to carry on sort of projecting upwards, at least over the next few months. The interesting part will be, of course, when Boris relaxes the travelling restrictions, and if all of a sudden we can go abroad and we don't have to quarantine, are we all just going to drop everything and go on holiday? I don't know. That could be the telltale, couldn't it?
Well, I suppose so. I must admit, I've deferred my holiday into next year again. First world problems and all that. I do get that. So I just, I felt a bit slumpy. My shoulders slumped the day we did that. It was clearly the right thing to do, but I was still a bit, okay, no holiday. So, and interestingly, and I think I mentioned this last time we chatted, Stu, for the next sort of next 3 weeks, I'm working away. It'll be my first sort of locum work in an office for, well over a year. And I think that's been booked for quite a long time. And I think that's reflective of the fact that, and this is for partners, to be fair, that lots of people are immediately trying to sort of scuttle away the minute the old June 30th came and went. And I think, as again, I know I've said before, I've had quite a lot of requests to do locum work over the coming months, and I've just had to say, terribly sorry, I'm busy, terribly sorry, I'm busy. And if that's replicated across the country, there's going to be a lot of people looking for locums. And of course, the reality is, if they can't find them, then they're going to have the same situation when they get back from holiday. So you've almost got that sort of never-ending sort of
This
cycle
is the
of,
difficult part, isn't it? Where people are going to be on holiday, work per person is still going to be extremely high and at the same levels potentially as before the 30th of June. We're just sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul slightly, aren't we?
yes,
So
yes, that's a really, really good way of putting it.
yeah, this is the kind of perfect storm that we're talking about. Over the course of the next month, it's still going to test us, isn't it, as an industry?
Yeah, I think so. And of course, the lenders have got, a lot of very low mortgage rates out there at the moment. But I think, and we definitely said this 6-8 months ago, Stu, whether or not the final, assuming it will be, the final end of furlough is actually going to make a difference. Now, as we've said before, if we as conveyancers are aware that our client is on furlough, well, we should have been declaring that to the lenders a long time ago and should continue to do so. But I'm wondering whether that, for conveyancers at least, whether the end of furlough, the end of the stamp duty land tax holiday may be coming into more restrictions if we don't get the summer right. I wonder whether that will have, that's bound to have a sort of flattening effect on the market, I think.
I suspect so. I think we might make this year. I think any kind of dip in the market potentially would be next year or even the year after. At the moment, the supply and demand matrix is so tilted, isn't it? That and of course this climate has, I suppose, taught everybody that bricks and mortar and having an extra bedroom or a garden if you're living in a flat, that kind of thing is really valuable, isn't it? So at the moment, the supply and demand, I suppose, is going to keep the market at a level that's probably not going to be sustainable in the future. But to a degree, I think we'll get through this year okay, and it'll be what happens next year and potentially the year after that will be the flashing red line.
Yeah, maybe that's the time we all need to be booking our holidays.
That's what we need to get away. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, quite frankly, we'll have plenty of time. We'll have plenty of time in 2022, Stu. We'll be able to go on our holidays. So what's your sort of, did we need the stamp duty land tax holiday? Let's perhaps try to not talk about this again if we can avoid it. I'm sure we'll revisit it, but we said, look, we'll try not to do too negative a sweeper up. What's your professional opinion, Albads?
Well, it depends who we is. As a profession, did we need it? No. Did it kickstart the market? Undoubtedly, yes. It had an enormous impact. So what it was designed to do, it certainly worked, didn't it? Did we need it as an industry? Most definitely not. Were we considered as an industry? Most definitely not, because obviously it's made it so difficult for us to cope with and deal with as businesses. But it worked, didn't it? It worked for what the government wanted it to do. You can't, whatever way you look at it, arguably, it did make a significant impact into volume and numbers, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm assuming their stamp duty land tax take has gone up. I'm sure there's people out there that have got the stats. You do see, don't you, people sort of doing campaigns and so on and so forth on social media, putting press releases and stuff out, campaigning to either, abolish stamp duty land tax or, change it or whatever. But I think the government will have absolutely zero appetite for that. It's a nice little cash cow. Thank you very much. Everybody knows it. Everybody understands it. Everybody understands it. That's a different matter. I mean, I don't think conveyancers should really be advising on stamp duty land tax, but that's a different. I think
buyers are conditioned, aren't they, knowing that they have to pay it. So whilst buyers know they've got to pay stamp duty, I can't see why the government would relax it. If ever there was a time to review it, bearing in mind what we've all just been through, now would be the time, as the wording's so prevalent in everyone's thoughts, and whether that be public, the profession, whatever. But it would be a great time to get on that bandwagon for a complete review. As nobody could disagree, surely, that it does need substantial review. But like you said before a few times, I think that's going to be the least of their problems.
Yeah.
In the next 12 months. Literally,
I just can't see it. Just can't see it myself. I have
to say. Too busy having affairs anyway, aren't they?
Oh God, yes. It's all a bit difficult to keep up, really, isn't it?
I know. It's like a film.
The old lack of social distancing. I think I think it's tricky when you try to, if you're trying to take the moral high ground and you're not up there yourself, that does make your position quite
Throwing
untenable.
stones and glass houses scenario.
Well, slightly, although as I said to a friend of mine once, because metaphors have never been my thing, people, what did I say? People who've got patios shouldn't have greenhouses. That was how I obviously
Way of putting it.
Yeah, and actually that's exactly what people want now. So maybe that's a good place to finish. Maybe people do want the space now to have a patio and a greenhouse. So maybe my mixed metaphor from the late 80s, I know I don't look old enough, is perhaps as good a place as any to finish this chat, Stu. Our sweeper up. Conveyancers have still got a huge amount to do. We don't think the market's dipping, and you've got plenty of holiday requests on your desk, mate.
Fortunately so. Lots to sign off.
Yeah, I think you have, old buds. Well, take care. I'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.